So, today we're going to tackle a really interesting and honestly pretty controversial financial strategy: zero based budgeting. On the surface, it sounds simple enough, but when you get into the reality of it, well, that's a whole different story.
I want you to picture this. It's the start of your company's budget season. But instead of just tweaking last year's numbers, adding a bit here, cutting a little there, you're given a completely blank page. Every single team, every project, every dollar has to prove its worth from the ground up. Every single year. That intense idea, that's the core of zero-based budgeting, or ZBB.
All right, so let's break that down. Formally, ZBB means nothing gets a free pass. You see, in traditional budgeting, last year's budget is kind of the default starting point. But with ZBB, nope, everything starts at zero. This forces everyone to totally rethink every single program and expense. In theory, it sounds like the ultimate way to stay financially lean and mean, right? But here's where things get really interesting. That pure textbook version of ZBB, the one where you literally start from scratch every year, well, research from the Government Finance Officers Association shows it's basically a myth. In the real world of financial management, it almost never actually happens that way. So you have to ask, why not? The biggest reason is that the sheer amount of work is just overwhelming. I mean, think about it. You're asking managers to create these super detailed decision packages for everything their team does, often at different funding levels. We're talking about a mountain of reports. And it's more than just paperwork. It's a huge psychological drain. Managers end up spending months just justifying their team's existence instead of actually leading them. It can cause burnout, spark internal politics. It's just not sustainable. So how have organizations tried to make this work? Well, to make it practical, they've really evolved the concept down two different, much more manageable paths that still get called ZBB. Let's take a look at what those are. Okay, so this table lays out the split perfectly. The first path is something called zero line item budgeting. This is all about getting into the nitty-gritty details. It asks questions like, do we really need this software? Or can we get these supplies cheaper somewhere else? The other path, service level budgeting, is much more big picture. It forces a conversation about choosing between different tiers of service. Should we offer a basic, a standard, or a premium version of this program? It's less about the cost of supplies and more about what level of service we want to commit to in the first place. So why is this distinction so important? Because it highlights the huge trade-off with ZBB. On one hand, its big strength is that it makes tough decisions feel more rational and transparent. But the weaknesses are pretty major. It's not just the paperwork. The process can often be driven by which manager writes the most convincing proposal, not necessarily which project is actually the most valuable. And here's a key point. It focuses on justifying costs, which is not the same thing as making a service run more efficiently. Now check this out. This data really tells the story of how people on the inside feel about ZBB. It is incredibly polarizing. For every organization that's happy with their modified version, you've got even more saying the benefits just aren't worth the hassle. And what's really telling is that almost half of the organizations surveyed haven't even seriously considered it. That tells you its reputation for being a managerial nightmare is definitely out there. And that really brings us to the final critical question. Zero-based budgeting promises this ideal of a perfectly rational budget, where every single dollar has a clear and justified purpose. But as we've seen, chasing that ideal comes with an enormous administrative and frankly human cost. So the real question for any organization is this: is that perfect ideal truly worth the tough reality of the process?